Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about Pluto, the planet of ordeals, and the transformations that arise from them, coming out of retrograde on October 6th. Now, Pluto has a bit of an ominous reputation in astrology, which makes a lot of sense because Pluto, the planet, was named after the Roman god of the Underworld. Now, the Roman god of the Underworld ruled over everything that was buried beneath the surface of the earth. And of course, when you think of things buried beneath the surface of the earth, you think of dead bodies. And Pluto was indeed the lord of death, the lord of the realm of souls. And indeed, Pluto decided which souls were going to depart to the Elysian fields, where they would frolic about for the rest of their lives, living a wonderful, carefree afterlife existence, and which souls would be thrown into the belching pits of Tartarus, which was basically the ancient world's idea of hell. So it was given to Pluto the job of dividing what was worthwhile from what was wretched or putrid or rotten to the core. So there's a sense of justice that's always connected to Pluto as well. But the dead or the departed souls weren't the only things that Pluto ruled over in the underworld. Pluto also ruled over riches, things like gold, silver, precious metals, oil, which we call black gold, all came from beneath the surface of the earth. They all came from the underworld. And indeed, Pluto was so much associated in the mind of the ancients with wealth and prosperity that Pluto itself lends itself to the word plutocracy, which means the wealthy or the moneyed class in our current vocabulary. So there are a lot of things that are associated to Pluto. It can stand in for material wealth, or it can stand in for personal wealth. Another thing that was ruled over by Pluto, and which we regard in the astrological chart, are seeds. Seeds are planted into the earth where they hibernate or they germinate for a very long time before they sort of pop up through the soil, sprout, and go on to live and to blossom and to thrive. So Pluto has always been associated to that part of ourselves that lives beneath the surface of the chart. Now, Pluto as a planet is not particularly interested in your aspirations. Pluto as a planet is not particularly interested in your ambitions or your drive. Pluto's point is to make you live according to who you truly are. Now, that's not to be mistaken with a current idea that we have nowadays, which is living the authentic self, or feeling recognized, or feeling appreciated in our lives, or being the best that we can be. These are all ideas that are associated to the sun, Mars, even Jupiter, living your highest life or your highest meaning life, your most purposeful life would be a Jupiterian idea. Pluto is that you live according to who you truly are. Sometimes we have an idea of who we truly are, but a lot of times we don't. And this is what the astrologer Dane Rudhyar referred to as our seed self. There's our ego, the part of ourselves that we know to be true and that we like about ourselves, or maybe that we're particularly critical of. It's the part that's trying to live the best life that we can possibly live in our astrological chart. But Pluto is the seed self. That's the part of you that you carried into this world and that will sprout and that will go on and live your life. Sometimes you're living in accordance to it, and sometimes you aren't. Now, we don't always, as I said before, have the clearest idea of our seed self. It's kind of an inner idea of who we are, something that we feel about ourselves on a gut or guttural level that begins to approach the notion of a seed self. But a lot of times that sort of seed self can come out in our life and we can feel that it's not really who we should be. So a seed self can also reference talents or who you feel like you really are, or what your true identity is. And it might be associated with shame, or it might be associated with a feeling that you can never be this, that it's too impossible or it's too high a challenge. But nevertheless, it's who we carry around inside of ourselves anyway. So you can think of it as a part of your personality that you might not always recognize. You can think of it as a part of your personality that you're not always comfortable with. And you can even think of it as a part of your personality that you might put on the shelf or on the back burner because you're not really sure that you could live up to this. Nevertheless, Pluto keeps this seed self of yours alive and growing underneath the surface of your astrological chart. Now, Pluto goes in and out of retrograde, once a year, and it spends about half the time going direct and half the time in retrograde, which kind of mirrors the whole idea of the Persephone Demeter cycle, where Persephone spends half of her time underneath the surface of the earth and half of the time above it. And of course, when Persephone is underneath the surface of the earth, nothing grows. And when she's above it, things grow. So when we have Pluto coming out of retrograde, it's this idea that things in your life that might have been on hold, or things in your life that you might have felt were hibernating, are now, because Pluto is coming out of retrograde, coming to the surface. And these parts of yourself are kind of demanding space in your life. Now, as I said, this might be in reference to an aspect of your personality. This might be in reference to what you truly feel about a job, or what you really feel about a relationship, or it might even refer to certain decisions that you've put on hold because maybe they've seemed impossible, or maybe they've seemed out of keeping with how your life is set up, or maybe they seemed like something you couldn't really do, or maybe they were simply things that you didn't want to get around to. Well, now that Pluto is moving forward in the sky, there's this feeling of reckoning. There's this feeling of having to live out of this part of yourself. As I said, it might be a talent, something that you put on the back burner. Well, now you may be feeling like very much you need to do it. Maybe it's been a decision that you've been postponing. Now you're going to feel very much like you have to make this decision. Maybe you're involved in a situation in your life where you're playing for life or death stakes. Pluto has a lot to do with life or death stakes. And now, instead of sort of circling around the idea, you have to put both feet forward and you have to commit to the venture. So again, it's not this kind of like immediate or urgent thing as much as it is this feeling of inevitability, that the timing to move in this direction that you feel is in keeping with who you really are, with your seed self, that part of you that's underneath, that time to move forward with this is now. Okay, so there's no more beating around the bush. There's no more putting off for tomorrow what you can do for today. There's no more making excuses for yourself, because Pluto is insisting right now that you live according to your roots, according to who you are. And so this is something that I would counsel very much taking in stride over the next few weeks. You'll know what this feeling is. As I said, it's the decision you're putting off. It's the choice you don't want to make. It's the venture that you're not sure if you're really quite up to or not. With Pluto moving forward, it's saying you're up to this, okay? And that basically you have the power of the planet behind you, but you can still fail that if you decide to sidestep it, or to kick the can down the road, or to postpone. And if you do that, that's your choice, but you're going to also live with kind of this feeling of not having seized the day in a way that you really could have. If you work with this planet, as I said, this planet will not let you down. Pluto is indeed the planet of ordeals in astrology. It demands that we descend into the underworld of ourselves. It demands that we face things or fight for things that matter on a very, very deep level. So we go through these ordeals. No one ever chooses ordeals, but we go through these ordeals. But the second part of the Pluto description is that it is the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them, meaning that if you choose to take on this ordeal with your full heart and with your full soul, you will be transformed as a result. And the transformation as a result will be a rebirth and a new lease on your life.
Hi everyone, I'm Frank Clifford and I wanted to invite you to the upcoming Empowering Astrology series. I'm going to work with you to get a whole new empowering perspective. We're going to recognize the invitations, the challenges and the gifts in your birth chart, but also start to dismantle the fears and the prejudices. This 3-week journey is happening live in October for 3 consecutive Wednesdays, and you'll have access to the recordings for life. You can find out more and join me at astrologyhub.com/empowering astrology. Hope to see you there.